Little did he know that his life was about to take a dramatic turn when he, a police officer and a father of two, reacted to a report regarding possible child abuse. The sight that greeted him at the house left a profound impression on him. As reported by ABC 11, Lieutenant Brian of the Kingman Police Department, who is also a patrol sergeant and works the night shift, was contacted to see whether someone was okay at a neighboring residence. He had no idea what he was in for when he entered the house. It would change his life forever. Upon entering the house, Brian noticed a young girl inside and knew something was seriously wrong with her. A little girl named Kayla was there, and she was just a toddler. The third time that Kayla's abuse had been reported to police. It was tragically evident that she had been badly abused. I went there and realized that her injuries were definitely the result of abuse and needed to be investigated. According to Brian, I took care of her and brought her back to the station. In the hours that followed, Brian and Kayla became close, and they even watched a Wreck-It Ralph together. Brian met the little girl who would become his daughter, but he didn't know it at the time. When I came home that night, I told my wife about this adorable little girl we had met, and I wanted to bring her home. He added, for the caring cop. This wasn't fresh sentiment. He said, in the past 15 years, I've told my wife many times about kids I wanted to bring home and take care of, saying that it was a common topic spoken between them. A common theme in Brian's stories was his desire to save abused and neglected kids and provide them with a better life. Although Brian had always wanted to have kids of his own, this was a whole new ballgame. Once upon a time, in Kingman, Arizona, a family that included a police officer would become a small girl's eternal home. But this change wouldn't be made official for another 2.5 years. So don't expect it to happen suddenly. Following the transportation of Kayla to the hospital for assessment and treatment of her injuries by an official from the Arizona Department of Child Safety, AZDCS, Brian went back to his house. He tried not to think of little Kayla, but he couldn't. Brian, concerned about her welfare, contacted AZDCS to inquire about the possibility of paying her a hospital visit. After his request was approved, talks regarding Kayla perhaps residing with Brian and his family soon followed. The agency couldn't locate any relatives who were willing to take in Kayla. So Brian and Sierra, his wife, decided to do it. It was far from a simple undertaking, though. Indeed, Kayla's deserving home was the result of much hard work. A bed, a high chair, and a toilet chair were necessities. According to Brian, all she had with her was a bag of ill-fitting clothing and a cup. The Brian family reportedly took care of Kayla for 2 years before formally adopting her in 2020. At the age of 4. According to AZ Family. Thanks to 2020, we have a new family member. Lieutenant Brian exclaimed with joy. That was my gift from Santa. He continued. And he isn't the only one ecstatic about the outcome. Sierra and Kayla have each spoken about how they felt throughout the ordeal. I truly believe that fostering and adoption are life-changing experiences, Sierra stated regarding the matter. A great number of children are in need of assistance. You can make a huge difference, even if it's only for a little while. After Kayla is adopted, Brian and Sierra Brian intend to assist more children by renewing their foster license. I cherish him. Who could blame Kayla for saying, I love him so much? Kayla ultimately received the loving home she deserved after suffering abuse at the hands of people who were supposed to take care of her. All thanks to a police officer who went above and above in a major way. When we first received her, she could hardly speak other than a caveman-like grunt. She was unable to communicate, Brian acknowledged. And now she loves to talk, as kids do when they grow up in a secure and caring environment. He is overjoyed to report that Kayla is now content and thriving. Excellent work, Officer Brian. Hopefully, this act of kindness, love, and compassion serves as a role model for others.
After watching the first story above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Now, let's watch another similar story. While working as forklift operators in a Trenton, South Carolina warehouse in the fall of 2012, Emmanuel met his girlfriend for the first time. She was one of the few female employees, and Emmanuel took her initial rejection of him, he was black, as a sign that she was ready to take a stand. He finally managed to get her number after multiple failed efforts. Despite many interview requests, Emmanuel's girlfriend did not respond. However, Emmanuel was able to corroborate crucial portions of his narrative through her affidavits and text message exchanges. After months of being friends, they started dating in February 2013. She extended an invitation to Emmanuel to spend the summer at her place while her parents were out of town. She got pregnant in May after using a home pregnancy test. An appointment with the doctor was set up, and they began making plans for their future together. According to Emmanuel, they were overjoyed, but her folks weren't back yet, and she hadn't told them about the pregnancy or Emmanuel's arrival in their house. Regardless, according to Emmanuel, they became used to each other, even sharing the expense and attendance at doctor's appointments. They chose the name Ella for their unborn daughter after a sonogram confirmed they were carrying a girl. They were expecting a child around the middle of February 2014. Emmanuel accompanied his partner as she applied for Medicaid and leave of absence during the summer. None of her relatives had yet crossed his path. His girlfriend allegedly contacted him in tears in August. According to Emmanuel, a neighbor had told her about the pregnancy after her mother got back from vacation. Emmanuel claims that her mother confronted her and shamefully informed her, "You are pregnant by an expletive. You should be ashamed of yourself." She assured Emmanuel time and time again that they would never give their child up for adoption, but he still worried about it. She responded, "If you ever had to give your baby up for adoption, you would give it to me, right?" Although she denied ever planning to give up the baby, she did say she would. They had intended for her to make him her permanent residence by year's end. He claims, "At that time, I was like, I'm going to be here, we're going to do everything we need to do. Talk about moving in." According to him, Emmanuel's best friend, and Chelsea, Emmanuel's half-sister, started to mistrust him about this period. Emmanuel's mother's bar and grill north of town. She saw that Emmanuel's girlfriend was distant and had a bad feeling about something when they first met. She informed Chelsea that he believed the mother was planning to sell the child. She began looking into fatherhood rights after the incident and came upon the South Carolina Responsible Father Registry. This registry permits a male who has fathered a child with an unmarried woman to be notified of adoption or termination of parental rights actions, according to the state's Department of Social Services. Emmanuel would never know that his partner was planning to place the kid for adoption if he didn't register. Registering wouldn't give him exclusive custody of Ella, but it would give him a voice in court and notify him of any developments. However, Emmanuel maintained that he was exempt from registration requirements. Emmanuel couldn't believe his girlfriend's parents would genuinely make their daughter choose between staying with them or giving up her child for adoption. Even if she was afraid they would cut her off, signing up made him feel betrayed. He wasn't expecting a fight and didn't want to feel like he was getting ready for one. Emmanuel learned in September that his girlfriend's mother had expressed interest in meeting with him. Emmanuel saw this as a step forward. Emmanuel was hoping to meet with his girlfriend's parents to win them over and explain his intentions toward his girlfriend and the baby. It had been a month since her mother found out she was pregnant. However, she repeatedly put off meeting her parents, claiming they were too busy or out of town. According to Emmanuel, they waited 3 weeks before settling on a date. Although Emmanuel's girlfriend's father wasn't home when he and Natasha arrived, the mother didn't bat an eye when Emmanuel welcomed her. He sat them all down and laid out his strategy for helping out his fiancée and Ella, but the mother interrupted Emmanuel, recalling Natasha, saying, "You may be a nice fella, but my daughter knows it's forbidden to date a racist expletive." Natasha and Emmanuel shared a look of shock. "How do you think society is going to look at you?" said the girlfriend's mother. Natasha claimed that when the phone rang, the girlfriend's mother shushed everyone and held up her finger while talking to her husband. He obviously knew about the meeting. The wife replied, "Yes, I'm taking care of that. I'm taking care of that now," he said, hanging up the phone and telling the couple that adoption was their only choice. Then, Emmanuel's girlfriend told her mother that if it came down to it, she would give Ella to him. Emmanuel was relieved that his girlfriend had defended him as he walked out of the meeting. He thought they were in love and that they would go ahead and move in together while they waited for their daughter. Emmanuel received what appeared to be a comforting text from his girlfriend as he and his mother drove away. He read the note out loud to Natasha and gave her another confused glance, saying, "My mom likes you." It is depressing. After that incident, Emmanuel and his girlfriend stayed in regular contact. According to Emmanuel, she only returned home for half of the nights. She would come over once she thought her parents were asleep. His girlfriend was 6 months pregnant at this point. Emmanuel claims she told him her father had stopped talking to her at the beginning of November. Her visits started to taper down, but Emmanuel kept working on getting ready for her move-in, and their text message correspondence indicates they spoke every day. Following her diagnosis of gestational diabetes by her physician, Emmanuel texted her 3 times a day to inquire on her blood sugar levels. The visitors decreased much further in December. There were no more sleepovers or social calls, which his partner attributed to her ongoing diabetes tiredness. But according to Emmanuel, the last time he saw her while she was pregnant was on December 26 when he went with her to a doctor's appointment. Emmanuel reported that in January, his girlfriend informed him that her mother would be joining her for doctor's appointments, therefore he was no longer required to attend with her. She promised Emmanuel that he could be in the delivery room with her, and they kept texting every day. Emmanuel was under constant pressure to sign up for the South Carolina Responsible Father Registry by her friend and half-sister. He was upset by their insistence, but he changed his mind in the end. A diaper bash, which is a Southern male equivalent of a baby shower, was held on February 1, when Emmanuel's relatives, friends, and neighbors convened. Although his fiancée had consented to attend the celebration his mother was planning, her friends and relatives had not wanted to throw her a baby shower or party. Lots and lots of gifts were brought by the guests, including toys, bottles, wipes, clothes, and other necessities for babies. Food, music, and happiness were all present, but his partner never appeared. Emmanuel found out about his girlfriend's latest doctor's visit date being a fake around the same time. He started to worry if she would let him witness the birth and questioned if she was trying to keep him from learning about a doctor's appointment. He eventually registered for the Responsible Father Registry on February 4, the Tuesday following the diaper bash. His girlfriend kept telling him she was busy and would pick them up herself later, even though he tried to see her and drop off all the party gifts including a breast pump he had purchased at Walmart. A powerful ice storm that hit South Carolina on Monday, February 10, knocked out the electricity to 364,000 homes, damaged infrastructure to the tune of $54 million, and caused an additional $360 million in damage from falling trees. The Charleston and Icon areas were the worst affected, since the due date was just 5 days away. Emmanuel made the decision to walk outside and present the gifts despite the bad weather. His girlfriend wasn't home, but he had a developing hunch that something could be going on, so he parked at the end of the road and waited for her. She had not returned even after 3 hours had passed. The following day, his fiancée sent him a text message that read, "You know I love you, right?" It seemed strange to him that she was highlighting love right then. Emmanuel tried calling her multiple times, but she only answered once and gave a brief explanation about how constipation had kept her up at night. With the presents in hand, he went back to his house and began to dial his girlfriend's number, worried that she might be giving birth. "If you go into delivery or labor, please do not forbid me from seeing my child." He texted the hospital several times before he finally got through. She wasn't there, they informed him, if she hadn't gone into labor by the 24th. She had texted him that she would be inducer on that date, on February 19th, at 9 a.m. She sent him a photo of herself smiling and heavily pregnant. Her parents' four-poster bed rested at the foot of the settee. A few days prior, she said, the photo had been shot. He said it was heartbreaking to watch her progress to this point. Emmanuel was served notice documents by a private investigator who showed up at his home the next day, on Saturday, February 22, according to the records. He was listed as the presumed father of a female child of mixed racial and ethnic heritage who was born at Aiken Hospital on February 11, 2014, and an adoption petition was lodged in Greenville County on February 19, 2014. According to the records, his daughter was born the following day following the ice storm. Due to the lack of information regarding the adoption in the notice, Emmanuel had no idea who had taken his daughter and where she was. He had received a text message from his girlfriend the day before informing him that the baby was still in her belly. Out of his rage, Emmanuel texted her, accusing her of being deceitful, manipulative, and dishonest with him. "I can't take back what I've done," his girlfriend said. "I apologize." Emmanuel drove 2 hours on Monday, February 24, the next working day, to submit his opposition to the adoption. The couple seeking to adopt had selected attorney Raymond, whose practice was located in Greenville, although the usual venue for the objection would have been Ella's birth county, Icon. In the Greenville County courtroom at 1 p.m., Emmanuel filed his pro-objection, which was written by hand. His declaration was unadorned and to the point. "I'm contesting the adoption proceedings. My partner in crime stated she would not undergo induction since she had not dilated. She informed me that the baby was still in her stomach during our daily conversations. Unbeknownst to me, a private investigator had already served the summons papers. Subsequently, he personally brought a certified copy of his objection to Raymond's office. To verify his presence, he snapped a photo of the agency's sign. Citing attorney-client privacy, Raymond chose not to comment on Emmanuel's case details. Nevertheless, he was already aware that an interested father could thwart the adoption by the time he submitted documents with the court, which included a copy of Emmanuel's registry dated February 13. Without including Emmanuel as a party, the adoptive couple filed legal documents on February 19. Raymond gave Emmanuel 30 days from the date of February 20 to file an objection with the Greenville County Court over the adoption proceedings, as stated in the notice he signed. The adoptive parents were able to bring Ella home that very day because South Carolina officials had granted their request for an out-of-state adoption. This story's adoptive parents choose not to be interviewed. He is a towering businessman with sandy hair and she is a small homemaker with dark hair. Both are in their 30s, according to the documents. Their household income is somewhat over the median, and they are religious and middle class. They are a mixed-race pair. Just like Emmanuel and his fiancée, in a subsequent letter to Emmanuel, the couple detailed their predicament. As members of a tight-knit religious community, nearly everyone had children, and both of them came from big families. Natural conception efforts by both of them had been unsuccessful, as had the use of fertility medicines. After a string of expensive and fruitless in vitro fertilization (IVF) attempts, the wife was getting close to her reproductive deadline, the age of 40. They settled on a private, church-based adoption agency to handle their search. They detailed their story, their marriage, and their new townhouse in an online page that they made. The profile included happy images of the couple. A birth mother could locate them by conducting a search pertaining to the education of adoptive couple, racial background of adoptive couple, mother's employment after placement, and willing to adopt a child with an unknown father. This couple had been picked by 4 other birth mothers who later changed their minds and decided to keep their babies. In a subsequent letter to Emmanuel, the pair conveyed their sympathies and admiration for the mother's final decisions, stressing that their religion required them to show compassion and understanding despite the agonizing pain of each disappointment. They were about to give up until Emmanuel's fiancée emailed them to express her admiration for their mixed-race heritage, beachfront lifestyle, conventional marriage model, and geographic distance from South Carolina. Beginning in late August, this email sparked a flurry of correspondence between the adoptive couple and their agency. Communication logs for September 5 indicate that between 7 a.m. and 1 p.m., 20 calls, emails, and letters were exchanged. The pair had a joint adoptive interview on September 11. A week later, this had previously happened when Emmanuel met his girlfriend's mother. Emmanuel's girlfriend informed the couple, according to an affidavit, that she wanted to keep in touch with them after the adoption even if she was unable to raise the child herself, if everyone agreed. This open setup would facilitate communication. She informed the adoptive couple that the biological father was not present and had not given them any emotional or financial assistance during the pregnancy, but she did not reveal his identity. The adoptive pair proceeded cautiously despite the birth father's apparent disengagement and the birth mother's apparent eagerness. They made preparations to be there when she informed them that her due date was February 15. According to court documents, Emmanuel's ex-girlfriend kept in weekly contact with the adoptive pair. Not long before the due date, they made the trip to South Carolina to meet her and her parents. Her father was among the family members that approved of the placement. That day, the doctor made the decision to induce labor, and the baby was born early the next morning. The couple assumed custody right away. Emmanuel didn't find out about the adoption until they got back home with the baby on February 22. The putative father must be served by the adoptive parent's attorney within 10 days after obtaining the registrant's name. As per the putative father register statute, on the 9th day, Emmanuel was served. According to court documents, Raymond was notified on February 13 of Emmanuel's registration. The adoptive couple revised their adoption documents by 4 p.m. that day to include Emmanuel's registration, but they did not include him as a party because they lacked evidence proving he was the biological father. Nearly 4 weeks after the investigator had issued Emmanuel with notice papers, on March 20, Raymond wrote the judge an icon to say he would create documents to confirm Emmanuel's paternity upon his return from vacation. Emmanuel sat on his back porch that evening on April 3. Waiting for a message from his lawyers. It wasn't long after he filed his lawsuit at the courthouse that he went to Jennifer Moog's Icon single-family law business. Now, she says. It was one of those situations where the Greenville court required assistance. He paired up with managing attorney Nichols Graham of South Carolina Legal Services in Greenville, and the three of them were now awaiting word. Emmanuel can still clearly recall the instant before the text message appeared. He looked up to see a lone owl perched on a great oak limb above him as he sat outside enjoying the quiet of South Carolina springtime. He saw it as omen because owls were uncommon in that region. Right then, his phone rang. Paternity test is back. You are Ella's father. From then on, things happened quite quickly. The adoptive couple participated via speakerphone during an emergency hearing held at the county courthouse on April 7, which Emmanuel and his attorney attended. Despite being present in the building, his ex-girlfriend opted not to speak in person and instead stayed outside the courthouse. She used an affidavit that Raymond signed to support her claims. The judge was required to balance her remarks with Emmanuel's. Emmanuel stated in court that he had paid for 2 doctor visits and assisted her in getting Medicaid. Despite her assertions that he had never contributed to her medical expenditures, she maintained that he could provide for the child financially. But Emmanuel produced a sworn financial declaration and testimonies from family members who committed to providing for the child. One further reliable piece of evidence that Emmanuel possessed was his text message logs. He was able to convey his intense engagement in the pregnancy and his excitement for parenting his child through these texts. He was able to demonstrate that he repeatedly checked in on his ex-girlfriend to make sure she was keeping an eye on her blood sugar levels and to expose the depth of her deceit. The judge made a decision 10 days later, on April 17, saying that Emmanuel will be granted custody of the child on April 27. In a letter to the judge, Emmanuel's ex-girlfriend reiterated her allegations from the April 7 affidavit and expressed her unhappiness with the ruling. I would never have entered into adoption if I thought Emmanuel would ever have any rights, she said in her letter. I would never want the adoptive parents to go through that kind of suffering. I could never wish to take a child away from her only mother and father. I would never wish such trauma on my child. For her, Emmanuel's house is the least stable location. Dealing with the anguish and sorrow of this tragic result will take a lifetime. Emmanuel got his first email from the adoptive couple not long after the judge's decision. Paraphrasing, the email was done to keep it private. According to the adoptive parents, the biological dads were never involved in their prior adoption efforts. Rather, it was the mother who sought to reclaim her child, having eased their newborn daughters suffering from acid and colic. They proceeded to detail their everyday activities with her. Emmanuel found out that the infant was alert and perceptive, and that she could identify their faces. She was in a safe and loving environment with her parents, and they made it clear to him that they loved her deeply. She had brought them more joy than they had ever had before, and they wanted him to know it. Since the infant had become such a joyful part of their lives, they voiced their sadness at understanding that yet another adoption had fallen through. Upon her departure, they pondered the prospect of their home being filled with an empty nursery, and used strollers, and an abandoned swing. They did, however, decide that a father's right could not be obstructed by their deep anguish. They informed him that, under the court's decision, they will return the kid to Icon on May 3rd and express genuine regret for the conflict. Emmanuel recounts the typical difficulties of a new parent, including sleep loss, teething, and other routine adjustments. As he describes his initial months with Ella, he considered himself to be a parent figure and engaged in conventional parental activities. His daughter, a joyful girl with chubby cheeks and black curly hair, was well cared for by him and his little income as a customer service representative through a temp agency. After watching the stories above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. If you enjoyed our video, please like, subscribe, and share our channel. That's all about today's stories. See you next time.